The greyhound is one of the oldest breeds on Earth, and Homer knew it 3,000 years ago. Argos was not a hunting dog, not in the way we've been told. When Homer describes the animal that recognizes Odysseus after 20 years apart, he isn't sketching some generic mutt of the ancient world. He's describing a specific breed, and modern DNA sequencing has finally caught up to what Homer already knew. This is the greyhound, and the story of how it got here is stranger than anyone realized. Open Book 17 of the Odyssey. Odysseus has returned to Ithaca in disguise. He's aged, ragged, hidden even from his own household. He walks past the palace gates, and there, lying on a pile of dung, is a dog. Old, neglected, covered in flies. Homer tells us this dog was once a swift hound, bred and trained by Odysseus himself before he left for Troy. 2 decades of neglect have destroyed him. But when Odysseus passes, the dog lifts his head. He drops his ears. He wags his tail. He recognizes the man no one else can. And then, having waited 20 years for this single moment, Argos dies. It's one of the most quietly devastating passages in literature. For centuries, scholars treated Argos as symbolic, a metaphor for loyalty, a narrative device. They missed the clues Homer had built into the scene. Homer gives us 3 specifics about this dog, and each one narrows the field. The first is speed. Homer calls Argos swift, capable of running down wild goats, deer, and hares. That is vision-based hunting, sight chasing. Not the plodding, nose-first pursuit of a scent hound. The prey Argos hunted, hares, deer, and mountain goats, are animals you catch by seeing them move and running them down over open ground. That's a sighthound's job. That's what sighthounds were bred to do, and only what sighthounds can do. The second is nobility. Argos belongs to a king. He's trained personally by Odysseus. In the ancient Mediterranean, this wasn't incidental. Dogs bred for coursing were the property of aristocrats. Farmers had scent-tracking dogs and livestock guardians. Kings had sighthounds. The 2 categories didn't mix. When Homer tells us Odysseus raised this dog with his own hands, he's signaling status, resources, and access to a bloodline that would have been guarded, prized, and expensive to maintain. The third is physical form. When Homer describes Argos in his prime, he uses language that maps directly onto the lean, deep-chested silhouette we now recognize as the sighthound body plan. The narrow head, the long legs, the whip-like build made for one purpose: acceleration over open terrain. Now here's where it gets interesting. In the last decade, geneticists have sequenced the genomes of hundreds of modern dog breeds and compared them against ancient canine remains. The greyhound turns out to be one of the oldest continuously identifiable breeds in the world. Its lineage sits in what researchers call the sighthound clade, a genetic branch that diverged from other domestic dogs thousands of years before most modern breeds even existed. Some estimates place the split at around 4,000 years ago. Others push it further back. The Saluki and Sluki sit in the same clade, genetic cousins, all tracing back to the same ancient hunting lineage of the eastern Mediterranean and North Africa. Either way, the greyhound was already the greyhound when Homer sat down to compose the Odyssey. The DNA carries specific markers: genes governing skeletal proportion, fast-twitch muscle fiber density, a cardiovascular system built for anaerobic sprinting rather than endurance running. There's even a specific gene, myostatin, that in greyhounds is expressed differently from almost every other breed, directly controlling the lean, hyper-muscled body plan that makes them the fastest dogs on Earth. A 2023 Oxford study on sighthound genomics confirmed positive selection across the clade for bone mineral density, muscle regeneration, and cardiovascular efficiency. These aren't traits you accidentally develop. They're the result of selective breeding carried out over centuries in one specific region of the world, the Eastern Mediterranean and North Africa, exactly where Homer's world existed. And the archaeology backs this up. Walk through the Egyptian collections at any major museum. Look at the tomb paintings from the 12th dynasty around 2000 BCE. You will see them. The ancient Egyptians called these animals tessim, long-legged, narrow-waisted, whip-tailed hunting dogs, running down antelope beside pharaohs. Look at Greek pottery from the Archaic period, the era Homer belongs to. There they are again, coursing hares, standing beside spear-hunting nobles. Look at Roman mosaics 1,000 years later, same dog. The silhouette does not change. For 3,000 years across the ancient world, artists drew the same animal, over and over, because the animal itself was not changing. That is what genomics now confirms. The greyhound is a genetic time capsule. When you look at one today, that lean body, that impossibly deep chest, that instinct to lock onto anything that moves and give chase, you are looking at essentially the same dog Homer's audience would have recognized on sight. Which brings us back to Argos. Homer's audience did not need him to specify the breed. They saw the dog immediately. A swift hound owned by a king, trained for coursing, lying wasted in the dust. This was not an abstract dog. This was a very particular dog. The kind their own aristocrats bred. The kind they saw painted on their own amphorae. Homer was writing for people who knew sighthounds intimately, and he chose those specific details: speed, keen sense, aristocratic ownership, because his audience would fill in the rest. And Homer wasn't alone in this. Around 180 AD, a writer named Arrian, a Greek historian who served under the Roman Emperor Hadrian, composed a work called the Kinegetikos, or On Coursing. It is the oldest surviving written treatise dedicated entirely to sighthound hunting. Arrian describes the coursing dog in meticulous detail. The physical build, the training methods, the relationship between hound and hunter. His descriptions match Homer's almost word for word across 6 centuries. Arrian was essentially annotating what Homer had already shown. And neither man was inventing anything. They were recording a living tradition that stretched back to Egypt and beyond. We lost that knowledge somewhere along the way. When translations rendered Argos simply as the hunting dog, a specific breed became generic. A cultural touchstone became a metaphor. Scholars who had never watched a greyhound course a hare had no way to hear what Homer was actually saying. But the dog didn't disappear. The DNA didn't lie. There is one detail in the passage worth pausing on. Homer briefly mentions that Argos possessed keen scent. This has confused readers who know sighthounds hunt primarily by vision. Modern behavioral studies of greyhounds show something interesting, though. They do use scent extensively in early life training and in tracking wounded prey. The sighthound isn't a scent-blind animal. It's a vision primary animal that still retains the full canine sensory package. Homer was accurate. The translations weren't. Every element in that passage lines up. The speed, the prey, the aristocratic training, the sensory acuity, the physical build implied by the language. Argos is not a symbolic dog. He is a real, specific, identifiable animal, and his descendants are still with us. You can go to a track today or to a rescue home. You can watch a retired racer stretch out in the sun, all long lines and quiet dignity. And you are looking at the same animal Odysseus knew. Same skeleton, same instincts, same soul, if the word applies to dogs. 3,000 years of human civilization have risen and fallen around this breed, and the breed itself has hardly changed. That is the part most people can't quite accept when they first hear it. That a modern greyhound and Homer's Argos are, in genetic terms, essentially the same dog. Not similar, not related, the same. The greyhound was never what we thought. It wasn't shaped by Victorian breeders or hardened by racing tracks. It arrived at the modern world already ancient, one of the oldest surviving forms of the domestic dog, carried through millennia by the aristocracies that valued it, the artists who painted it, and the poets who wrote it into their stories. Homer knew. Arrian knew. The tomb painters of ancient Egypt knew. They all gave us the clues. It took us 3,000 years and a DNA sequencer to catch up. And when Argos lifts his head one final time and recognizes his master, that isn't fiction. That's a sighthound's loyalty. That's the animal you can still meet today, waiting by a window, watching for someone who has been gone too long. That is the greyhound.